Hello, welcome. I'm just letting people come in. But I can get started just with my brief housekeeping items before we begin. So my name is Claire Ladd, and I'm the Programs and Services Manager at the Mass Nonprofit Network. And thank you for joining us today. So we'll have a follow-up email for you after the webinar with the recording and information. So just keep an eye out for that. If you have questions during the webinar, you can ask them anytime. And let me know if there's any technical issues. Just put any question in the chat. If there's anything we can assist you with, I'll be monitoring that. And as well, just to give you a little background information about MNN, our goals here are to strengthen the nonprofit sector through advocacy, public awareness, and capacity building. So we offer programs such as these regular webinars to help with our capacity building efforts. And please stay tuned for future webinars and let us know if there's any topics you'd like to see. We have over 600 member organizations, so thank you to all of our members. And if you're not a member, definitely visit our website to find out more. So today's webinar is presented by Sentinel Group. Sentinel's Roundtable offers a unique opportunity for connection and collaboration, putting the nonprofit sector at the forefront of today's most important conversations. Today, we'll dive into key topics such as partnerships, research advancements, and leadership development strategies that are vital to strengthening our organizations. Our discussions will cover competitive benefits, employee well-being, and upskilling and reskilling your talent. We're excited to spotlight one of our nonprofit leaders, Seth Rosenzweig, CEO of Classroom Champions. Seth will kick things off before we head into our breakout discussions. Classroom Champions is an organization dedicated to empowering children to thrive socially, emotionally, and academically through the mentorship and mindsets of world-class athletes. Previously, Seth served as CEO of Team Impact, where he led the organization through unprecedented growth. Today, he'll share his 5 key principles for expanding your network and building stronger relationships. We'd also like to welcome our discussion facilitators and hosts from Sentinel, Chris O'Shea, Mike Newhall, and Tony Mancini. Chris is an employee benefits consultant at Sentinel and brings a wealth of experience in human resources and insurance, offering expert advice and solutions to help clients develop and execute strategic plans that demonstrate consistent value. Mike Newhall, Sentinel's VP of Business and Community Development. He leads the Sentinel Cares team. Through Sentinel Cares, strategic partnerships, sponsorships, programs, and volunteer initiatives, they work to reduce disparities, provide equitable and inclusive opportunities, and meet the diverse needs of the communities they serve. And then Tony Mancini is a retirement plan advisor at Sentinel, specializes in collaborating with small and mid-sized companies on their health and retirement plan benefits. So educates clients on financial wellness strategies to support their employee populations. So I will toss it over to Seth to begin the discussion.
Great. Thank you so much, Claire, for having me and for the Sentinel Group for sponsoring this. Looking forward to the conversation. And I thought, obviously, I think we're going to do breakouts at some point, so that you'll do breakouts separately, but I'll kind of give you a little bit of my thoughts and my philosophies around how do you build strong and trusted relationships. In the nonprofit sector, we all know that relationships are essentially the essence of life, right? That's how we thrive and succeed. It's through the power of relationships. But I'm gonna give you some perspective from when I was even younger, and also some perspective on some things that I've gone through personally to realize kind of why relationships matter, and that there's definitely some assumptions built into relationship building that I think we'll hopefully be able to demystify in some ways as well. So first, I'll just give an example. So, how did I even get here today? It was through Michael Newhall, right, from Sentinel Group. And if you think about how we met, it was the quintessential, we were at an event for the Boston Business Journal award ceremony for leaders in corporate philanthropy. And we met through a mutual contact that we both had. And so the conversation could have stopped there, right? We met at an event. We had a lot that we had in common. We wanted to, talk about philanthropy and life. And so it could have stopped there, but, it didn't, right? Why are we here now, essentially 8 years later? And that's because of the work it takes and the appreciation that I think we both have for the power of relationships in our lives, in our work. It really cross-cuts every part of our lives. So I just wanted to that's a testament and example of kind of nurturing and cultivating and making it mutually beneficial and not having it be transactional in the moment. And so I think in the nonprofit, I've led nonprofit organizations like Team Impact and Classroom Champions. I've worked in the social impact sector my entire career. And the one thing that I think, no matter what type of organization, small, big, academic medicine, faith-based, health and human services, community-based, is that relationships really drive your strategy in a lot of ways. And so when I was younger, I kind of got the bug around the power of relationships. It was incentivized through a competition through my little league team, where I was trying to raise as much money as I could for this pancake breakfast, and the winner got Red Sox tickets. The money went to support Little League in my local town in Massachusetts. But through that, I kind of developed this thirst and this excitement around building strong and trusted relationships and not being transactional. So I paved, I ran the pavement. I met people. I ended up winning. I won every year for 6 years because of the fact that I obviously wanted to win the Red Sox tickets, but more importantly, I made amazing connections and built great relationships along the way for people that I probably never would have met. And so that for me, started at a young age, of the power of relationships. And I saw firsthand how they can really be mutually beneficial, right? If you have a real relationship, you want to help each other, you want to support each other. And that applies for the nonprofit community as well. And I'll say there's definitely some misperceptions out there. We often talk about it's all about who you know, right? It's all about your network, right? Network is everything. And I think with that implies that some people either have a network or they don't have a network, right? And that you're either lucky to have one or you're unlucky that you don't. And I think what I've realized during my professional journey is relationships take real work, right? First of all, how do you meet people? You have to put yourself out there. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be willing. If you're representing a cause or a nonprofit, you wear that on your sleeve, and you realize that at the end of the day, that organization deserves for you to be proud and talking about it, whether you're at a dinner party or whether you're at a sporting event, that you're wearing that on your sleeve. And so, I think that that's the first thing. The second thing I would just say is it takes real work. You have to figure out not only how to connect with people, but what is your strategy for building a real relationship. And you can't go into these conversations. I think many times, you know, especially on the nonprofit side, we see here are our prospects. Here are people that we think will like what we do. Here is a list. And that becomes very list oriented, transactional oriented. And it's really about getting the win, right? The short term win of either raising money or getting them to do something for you. And what I've realized is it takes a lot of work to build authenticity and to show people that they want to align with you and that they want to help you. And you also need to figure out how you can connect with them, how you can partner with them, and how you can help them. And I think that for me, that's been the gratifying thing, is that these relationships, take a lot of work. And sometimes we obviously have this assumption that we just have a network or we don't. And I think it takes real work to build a network. It takes even more work to keep a network, and it takes even more work to, sustain it to a point where no matter if I leave Classroom Champions or Team Impact or whatever, that your network stays with you. So what I would say is do the work, have great conversations, get to know people. A lot of times when we, look at relationships on the nonprofit side, we feel like we have to oversell, and it's really not about selling, right? It's about asking good questions and listening and showing connection points, and really, making sure that you're not just out there selling an organization or a product, that you're out there really understanding what makes this person tick. What are they interested in? Who's their family? And I think from there is when you can build on that. But trying to get a short-term win in the long term is not going to be beneficial. The second thing that I talked about earlier was these relationships have to be mutually beneficial. They can't be one-sided. They can't be transactional. And so that means that you have to have real good intentions going in, that you want to build a relationship and that you're not just looking to close a deal or close a dollar. that you're, really looking at this with the right intentions coming into the relationship, and you're listening, right? There's a reason I think that we have two ears and one mouth, right? I think it's because we should be listening more than we're talking, and really building that initial relationships and setting that foundation up front to really get to know people. The other area that I think, was really interesting to me is, like, you have to be willing to be vulnerable, right? It takes hard work and it takes initiative to go out there and ask for help or try to make a new friend. That requires real vulnerability, and you kind of have to be fearless and kind of put some of your stuff aside to, realize that the worst thing they can say is no, right? At the end of the day, that's really, you can't have a fear of being rejected, because what you're really trying to do is build a really good relationship. And in order for it to work, you need to make sure that it's the right fit for you too, right? And that they align with your values and what you're trying to do. So I would just say, have a willingness to put yourself out there, give it a try. The worst thing that can happen is they say no. What I also realized through this journey is that you really have to know who you are, right? If you want to connect with someone personally, you have to know who you are. You have to know what your core values are. You have to know, what ideas you care about the most, what you stand for. People want to know who you are and what you stand for and what your values are, what you're passionate about. And so doing a little bit of internal thinking about how you want to represent yourself out there in relationships is really important. And I think that the more that we know ourselves, the more that we're going to be able to build relationship with others and understand if there's alignment there. So I think that getting to know who you are takes work too. And if you want other people to know who you are, you have to know who you are first. And the last thing I would just say is, in terms of like the areas of focus are, you got to build your skills, right? And anything where you build the muscle memory, you're going to fail, you're going to learn, you're going to evolve. But these are skills, right? And the more practice, the more intentionality, the more we put ourselves out there, the more we build on it, the more we learn from mistakes, and not just see them as a negative, but see them as a learning moment. And so for me, like, being able to build my skills, try things, make mistakes, um, get better. And, like, when you make mistakes, letting people know you made a mistake or you can be vulnerable, I think has been really, really helpful for me as I looked in my career to build these relationships. But I think at the end of the day, the reason, from a nonprofit lens, it takes time to build relationships, and you have to do it the right way. And I think that the more that we can be focused on these strong and trusted relationships versus the transaction and getting the net results, whether it's a for-profit sales job or whether it's a nonprofit, I think the same applies. That people want to trust, people trust people, and they want to feel like they know you, and they want to feel like they trust you. And I know a lot of us have pressures on us around, like, financial pressures, or mission-driven pressures. But I think the more that you can not feel that burn of, I have to get this done, I have to raise this dollar, I have to do that, the better you're going to be in this ecosystem of, like, a lot of really good nonprofits doing a lot of really good things. But at the same time, like, people are going to gravitate towards people and towards real relationships. And that's where the staying power is in this whole thing. And so if you look at, and I'll share in the spirit of being vulnerable, even though we're being videoed, I'll share one thing that really highlighted my realization around why relationships matter, and that life really is about relationships and experiences. So 2 years ago, I had a massive heart attack. I was home alone. Had the widowmaker, which is basically 100% blockage of the top of my left ventricle. I was 5 minutes away from not making it, right? So when you go through a traumatic moment, and you come out in a positive way, which is obviously how I came out, where you realize that, like, if I didn't call 911, if I didn't unlock my door, if I didn't, do the right things, that I wouldn't be here today. And when you think back, like, in that moment of trauma, you think back and you look at you almost do like um, an audit of your life. And if I think about my life, like, what really matters? Like, what really matters? Like, for me, it's not about, you know, buying the right things. It's not about the things I have or accumulated over time. It's really about the relationships. And what came out of the woodwork after that was everyone from people I hadn't talked to in 25 years to people I had just met reaching out to me, showing gratitude that I'm still here, saying that they're going to learn the lesson from me, from my own experience. They're going to take better care of themselves. And for me, I think what I took stock in is like, at the end of the day, like that's all that matters. Whether it's relationship with your family or whether it's relationship with your colleagues or whether it's relationship with people that you want in your life and you want to surround yourself with, like the power of these strong relationships has the staying power to like be with you forever and to add great value to your life. So why not apply those same principles to the nonprofit sector, the work that we do, because we deserve to have great people involved with our organizations. And what I've also found is you're going to get way beyond where you would have gotten, whether it's financially from a donor or whether it's other things that you're looking to do if you have these like relationships built in and the foundation built in. And that's proven true. Like you may get a short term, like what you see as a win, but if you want real people to be around you and to support you through the good times and the challenging times, it's all about like authenticity of relationships. So following those 5 principles on my end have really done well for me and in every nonprofit that I've worked in. And I'm still in touch with those. My first job ever was at Combined Jewish Philanthropies, where I was like thrown into a development role and I was like cutting my teeth and like running around, making mistakes. But I have people in my life still from that experience. And so that for me is like really powerful that people have stayed with me and I've stayed with them. And the last thing I'll just share before we pause for a minute is I recently reached out to 2 mentors of mine that I had not spoken to in 20 years. And they were the ones who set me on the path around being in the social impact space in general, right? One of them was actually at the college I went to, um, and kind of got me on this path and saw education as an opportunity for me at that time. And someone was from the Department of Education where I worked under Richard Riley when I was in school, who was a secretary, and I reconnected with them. And just by reconnecting with them, I talked to them about how much of an impact they had on my life and that I'm sorry that I haven't been in touch with them in recent times. And what I heard from them was, you had a profound impact on my life as well. And hearing your story and hearing your success gives me great gratitude and gives me great excitement. And so it just shows that people want to help people. They just have to feel like they can trust and know the person. And so I'll leave it there. But I think that in the nonprofit sector, whatever department or industry or area or sector within that sector you're in, I think that relationships are the core of everything. And I can't think of any more important both quality around relationship building and asset in my life than these relationships. So I'll stop there, but wanted to share a little bit around my passion and excitement for building relationships and having great people in your lives to help you accomplish great things.
Thank you, Seth, very much. That was, I think, as you made mention to at the end, there's so many parallels, right? It's not just nonprofits, right? But like I think of myself in a business development role, and people aren't necessarily buying from the company I'm at or where I've been previously. They're buying from me, right? So if you can get people to know you, like you, and trust you, I think that's most importantly, right? And that's the foundation of any good relationship. Are you open to fielding a few questions from the audience? Would that be okay?
Definitely.
Okay. So, well, I don't want to speak first. I do have a couple of questions, but does anyone?
Let me actually mention one thing that you did really well when I first got on the call in terms of like relationship building, like just from a Chris, just to put you, not to put you on the spot, but just to like share something. The first thing you did is, one, you did your homework on me. Two, you realized that we did have a mutual connection point, right? So through, at the time you're a former company that you had worked for,
Yeah.
who I worked with. And so that's some of the strategy as well. It's like know who you're talking to and figure out a connection point that can actually like break down barriers right away. And I just want to just call that out. Like that was a really, not that you were intentionally trying to do that, but
Yeah,
it was definitely something that as you build your skills in relationship building, like I saw right away that like you broke down the barrier between us right away by creating that mutual connection point and like knowing who I was.
great. Yeah, thank you for the observation.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like I said, I have questions, but does anyone else want to chime in first before I? No? I won't put anyone on the spot here. Yeah, so Seth, I'd just be curious to know, like I feel like in our world too, we're always trying to network with folks and find the right network of people, right? I think that's so important, is finding the right network. And at some point, like you got to realize just maybe it's not a good fit, right? There's not that mutual beneficial component of it. What are some unique things aside from like the, traditional coffee or lunch that you're doing to, or you've done in the past to try and stay in front of people and kind of build relationships and to keep it front of mind and given the schedule you have?
One thing I would say, and we talked about this earlier, is like face to face, I think is a great way to do this. I think that I think Zooms and Teams and other things can provide value, but I think, getting in front of someone face to face, I think there's nothing better in seeing them in their own settings. You can learn a lot about people by going to their home or by going to their office where they feel comfortable, and you can learn a lot just by observing. So that's been really, really interesting for me. I think more recently, some of the things that I've done as I build relationships is like find like even like how do you break down the relationship from just kind of like the end transactional purpose. And so for me, it's been like even going on walks with people, or um, going to a sporting event, or even just like in some cases, like I have, we're in the same town and having our kids connect, like not that you necessarily want to go kind of go into a gray area, but I think that ultimately connecting on a personal level, I think adds a lot more value. So I was just at someone's house earlier today who let me work from her office because I had meetings in between. I didn't have time to get to where I needed to be. And like you learn a ton about someone, and they kind of break down their walls, and they kind of share with you a lot if you can get in their own environment.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm happy to follow up with a question, if you don't mind, Seth, and the group. First of all, thanks for jumping on and for your time and sharing your story. And I'm glad you're back on your feet after your health scare a little bit, and really puts, I think, life in perspective for all of us hearing that. So thank you. I guess could you speak a little bit more, maybe, if it's helpful for the audience, about so you're, I want to say, maybe a few months, maybe 6 months into launching Classroom Champions. And I guess what's been the biggest order of business for you, or the biggest challenge maybe that you didn't see coming, or maybe you did see it coming, with starting up your nonprofit, right? And any other kind of long-term goals and aspirations that you have that maybe the audience can resonate with for their own organizations.
Yeah, I mean, really good question. I think that you can only learn so much before you're actually in the role. I think that what I had been at a place for 8 years prior, where I really helped to kind of build it. In terms of like, there were like 6 employees when I started. They had gone through 3 executive directors in a 4-year period. Morale was low. It was a little bit of like, wow, we got to like get our culture right and like figure this out together. Because I think at the end of the day, culture is like everything in an organization. Here, actually, the organization was around for 15 years before I came in. So I didn't, so the, what I had to do was like learn the culture and meet the people and listen and not come in with like an agenda or, preconceived notions. And so like, it's hard to like not to like take the time to do that and to appreciate that and to not try to move too quickly. I was also coming from I was replacing someone who was like the founder CEO. who was moving on to the board chair. And so having to like really ensure there was the emotional intelligence on both of our parts to like understand that like we have to figure some of this out together and that it's not going to be perfect. And a relationship between a board chair and a CEO is obviously very important, both from a positive lens or it can also be disruptive. And I think that having to set that stage really quickly with my partner in terms of the board chair was really important. And I think the last thing was like, sometimes people want to come in and they want to like make all these changes, right? They're like, oh my God, we got to do this. And like, I feel like there's like a balance between gaining excitement and energy from a staff that are coming in being a little bit uncertain about you, to also understanding where you would prioritize like the low-hanging fruit of opportunities of evolution to put some personalization on things while not taking away from the culture. Like that's been the most interesting thing. I will say like from the one thing that I did right off the bat was like bring some of my network in to invest in it. Because I think you infuse some revenue and some capital, people start taking you a little bit more seriously. And I think that's what happened initially. But yeah, I mean, I'm 4.5 months in. I actually have an all-staff retreat. We're all remote, which makes it even more challenging. And we have an all-staff retreat next week in Phoenix. And I'm looking forward to meeting some people for the first time in person. And frankly, some of the people who've been there for years have never met in person. So I think that's going to be really telling. So getting people together and taking a step back and not feeling like we have to be so busy with the tactical and strategic stuff that have to happen, and saying like, let's take 3 days and like get to know each other as people and figure out bonding and figure out where we want to go with this thing and figure out the challenges together, I think will be a really important moment for us.
That's wonderful. And again, back to your theme of relationships and just like nurturing the team that you work with every day. And but that's helpful. Thank you.
No problem.
Hi, Seth. I'm Jessica Ducrow. I work for Pathways for Children. We're in Gloucester, a nonprofit. On the vein of being that kind of change maker, I'm in the process. So when I was hired as the director of human resources, the culture, there was a lot to be said for the culture of the organization. So there were a lot of things that I was trying to bring forward on behalf of the CEO, their vision. And conversely, I'm also a board chair of a library of trustees. And in both arenas, I find myself saying and assuring folks, as changes are occurring, there are people that are going on the team that are going to self-select, and that's okay, right? And I say this with all conviction and certainty that it's part of it. But how do you, as the leader and the person sitting with some of that discomfort and knowing that, it kicks up, change kicks up, what are some things that you do to kind of take care of yourself?
It's really good. Change management is really hard. And especially when you realize that there's gonna be some hard decisions and that there is gonna be some self-selection.
Mhm.
I think pre-heart attack, I was not following the advice that I would give.
Mhm.
And I think not that you need to have a crazy event to be able to like actually follow your own advice, but I think what I realized is we have this like culture of busyness that like you feel like you have to be
Mhm.
busy in order to feel like you're being productive. And like I realized that that is just a myth and doesn't exist. And frankly, you're more productive if you actually take care of yourself. So the first thing that everyone on the staff did before I even started, they Googled a blog piece that I wrote about basically balance and about taking care of yourself. And they found this like piece that I had written at Team Impact. And really what it was about, it was like work-life balance matters, both from feeling like you have a life outside of work and frankly, being able to be re-energized and recharged coming into work. And so whether that for you would be, I believe there's a lot of benefit to physical activity, both from a mental and physical standpoint. So obviously I've been really focused on that. Meditation and mindfulness has been really helpful for me. Something that I never thought I would break into, but like what a way to center yourself than to actually have to push everything else out of your head and focus on the actual present moment. You know, I got into this like pattern of just like, you know, I travel a lot for work, but if, you know, when I'm here, like being present for my family and my kids, and making sure that like you model great behavior, because at the end of the day, as a leader, whether you're head of HR in particular or a CEO, people are going to follow your lead. And so if you say to them, let's take care of each other and, you know, let's focus on our own well-being, and you're not showing them that you're doing that, you're not taking vacation, you're working, you're sending them emails at 10 o'clock at night and at 5 o'clock in the morning. So I think part of it's like changing your own behavior as a leader to show them acceptability of like, if you want to go and do some things for yourself, you should do that. So finding your own, so for me, it's been physical activity, eating well, you know, caring what I put in my body, spending more time with kids in particular, and other things that I care about outside of work, you know, meditation, journaling, finding ways for me to just make sure I'm taking care of my own mental well-being and physical well-being has been really helpful. And what's happened is people have modeled that. And that's kind of what I've seen reflected in a 4-month period. I think people were worried that I was going to come in and, you know, they didn't know what to expect. But I think that modeling it can obviously change people's perceptions pretty quickly.
Thank you so much.
Seth, thank you so much for being here.
No problem.
As we made reference to, and Jessica, you were at the first nonprofit roundtable too. So 2 for 2, your attendance is excellent. But yeah, we're kind of building this thing out, right? The nonprofit roundtable, and it was a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. I know, Claire, this is being recorded, so I'm sure there'll be some sort of disbursement of this and people will really enjoy it. So thank you for being here. Jessica, thank you for being here. Claire, is there anything you wanted to add before we wrap up here?
No, just thank you to all of you for joining us today. I'll send out the recording to everyone so you can have this for reference. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me if you have any thoughts or questions anytime.
Great.
Perfect. Thanks
Claire.
everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all. Have a great day.
Yeah.
Thanks,
you.
everybody.